Welcome to this explainer. Let's just break the fourth wall right out of the gate, shall we? You ever look at, say, a massive new public bridge, or maybe a freshly paved road, or even just the computers sitting in your local government office and wonder, whose hands exactly did my hard-earned tax money pass through to get those things there? I mean, we all pay taxes, right? But very few of us actually know the specific people tasked with spending them. Well, under the new Government Procurement Act, that's RA 12009, this isn't just some faceless bureaucracy. It's actually a highly structured hierarchy of very specific key players. So, quick question for you. Which procurement player role would you want to be and why? Comment below. And more importantly, did you know citizens can be observers in the process? Drop an eye emoji if this is news to you. Because honestly, you can think of this bureaucracy kind of like a high-stakes Ocean's 11 crew. Everyone has a highly specific job, a unique set of skills, and if just one person drops the ball, well, the whole operation goes sideways. And the best part? You, the regular citizen, can actually get a seat at the table.
Okay, let's dive into this. It might just look like a pen in a contract, but those signatures dictate where millions and sometimes literally billions of your tax dollars go. Government officials are directly handling your money to procure goods, infrastructure, consulting services, the whole shebang. Because the stakes are so incredibly high here, the law mandates a very rigid separation of roles. Why? To ensure transparency, accountability, and efficiency. So let's go ahead and meet the crew.
First up, we have the HOPE. That stands for the head of the procuring entity. Basically, this is the boss. If we're talking about a local government unit, this would be your mayor, your governor, or your punong barangay. In a national agency, it's the head of that specific department. They hold the ultimate authority. They are the ones who approve the annual procurement plan. They sign the notice of award, and they execute the final contract. The buck literally stops with them.
But, the boss doesn't do the heavy lifting of actually finding the contractors. That job falls to the BAC, or the Bids and Awards Committee. You can think of them as the matchmakers. Under RA 12009, this is a central recommending body made up of 5 to 7 permanent officials, and they manage the entire competitive selection process. We're talking everything from publishing the initial invitations to bid, all the way down to evaluating the proposals and then recommending the winning bidder back to the HOPE.
To round out our crew, we have the end user, or the shopper. They're the specific department that actually identifies the need for the project and monitors its implementation. Then there's the Technical Working Group, or TWG. These are the experts that the BAC calls in to verify really complex technical, financial, and legal specs. Next is the budget officer, basically the bank, who ensures all procurement stays within the approved budget for the contract, or the ABC. Then we have the suppliers and contractors, the talent, who actually submit the bids and deliver the goods. We also have the inspector or inspection committee, acting as the quality control, to ensure whatever gets delivered meets the exact standards. And finally, the civil society organizations, or CSOs. These are the watchdogs, which means independent observers, yes, regular citizens, are legally mandated to sit in on these proceedings to provide public oversight. How cool is that? Section 1. The Master Plan, mapping the 7-stage procurement matrix. Let's move on and see how this all builds together. Because sure, it's one thing to know the players, but how do they actually interact? Well, RA 12109 lays out a strict 7-stage procurement matrix, and every single player has a very specific lane they need to stay in. Look at the first 3 stages: planning, budgeting, and method strategy. Notice how the end user kicks things off by identifying the need and doing some market scoping. But wait, they can't just spend money right away. The budget officer has to step in during stage 2 to make sure the costs are within the authorized budgetary allocations while verifying market data alongside the technical working group. Finally, in stage 3, the BAC finalizes the bidding documents and the HOPE locks it all in by signing the final annual procurement plan. Literally, no procurement can legally begin without that signed plan. All right, once the plan is set, we enter the absolutely critical bidding and award phases. The BAC opens the bids, and the TWG conducts a deeply detailed evaluation of both the technical and financial proposals. And honestly, this is where the transparency of the new Procurement Act really shines. During stage 4, those civil society organizations actually live stream the bid openings. Yeah, they prepare reports on the integrity of the process, keeping things completely above board. If everything checks out, the BAC recommends the award in stage 5, and the HOPE makes it official by issuing the notice of award and signing the contract with the CSOs right there in the room witnessing the whole thing. Now, what's really interesting here is the deliberate separation of powers. The Bids and Awards Committee does all the evaluating, sure,
but they can only recommend the award via a formal resolution. They cannot actually sign the contract. The Hope, on the other hand, can issue the notice of award and sign the contract, but, and this is a big but, they can't just go and pick their favorite contractor. They have to rely on the BAC's recommendation. If the Hope wants to disapprove the BAC's choice, they have to provide valid, reasonable, and highly justifiable grounds in writing. This entire system of checks and balances is designed specifically to prevent corruption.
Finally, we reach stages 6 and 7, implementation and acceptance. Once the contractor actually gets to work, the end user is right there monitoring their performance. The technical working group jumps back in to perform strict tests on the delivered goods or infrastructure. If there are delays, the BAC might recommend sanctions or liquidated damages. But if all the specs are met, the inspection committee conducts a final rigorous inspection and the Hope approves that final paycheck.
Section 2. The accountability question. When things go wrong, who takes the fall?
So, the crucial point we really need to address is this. We've met the players, and we've seen the master plan. But what happens when that new bridge cracks a year later? Or those office computers just never arrive? Well, RA 1209 places the primary responsibility for the prudent and judicious use of government resources squarely on the Hope. That's right, heavy is the head that wears the crown. While there's this massive team involved, the boss holds the primary burden of making absolutely sure that public funds aren't wasted. They are the final signatory, which means they are ultimately accountable to the government and, most importantly, to you, the taxpayer.
However, don't think for a second that the rest of the crew gets a free pass. Everyone is accountable. It really is a team effort. If the Bids and Awards Committee, or say the end users, try to cheat the system, like for example, by deliberately splitting contracts into smaller amounts just to avoid competitive bidding, or by unduly influencing the process, they are going to face severe criminal and administrative liability. The law is literally designed to catch bad actors at every single stage of that 7-step matrix we just walked through.
Look, understanding these roles isn't just about memorizing some bureaucratic trivia, it is a fundamental part of your civic duty. Knowing who is responsible for what empowers you to demand better from your government. It allows you to watch the watchers. And speaking of watching, next time we'll be covering the Annual Procurement Plan, the one document every citizen should be reading, but almost nobody does. Seriously, you won't want to miss it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.